Reimagining corporate culture, the strategic impact of workplace flexibility. Listen to this article. Abstract. This article explores how workplace flexibility policies influence corporate culture dimensions based on recent research and organizational data. Drawing on Glassdoor insights and academic studies. The evidence reveals correlations between flexibility arrangements and key cultural indicators including agility, work-life balance, leadership quality, and supportive environments. Organizations with flexible work policies often demonstrate advantages on cultural dimensions compared to those with rigid in-office requirements. The research challenges assumptions that in-person mandates inherently strengthen organizational culture. This analysis provides executives and HR leaders with evidence-based approaches to workplace policy development that can enhance both cultural outcomes and organizational performance, suggesting that thoughtful flexibility implementation may better achieve the cultural benefits many organizations seek. As organizations worldwide recalibrate their workplace strategies, a central debate has emerged around the cultural implications of workplace flexibility. Many executives have mandated office returns, citing concerns about cultural degradation, collaboration deficits, and reduced innovation. However, emerging evidence suggests these assumptions may be fundamentally flawed. This article examines how different workplace models, flexible, hybrid, and full-time in-office, correlate with specific cultural dimensions that drive organizational performance and employee experience. The stakes in this decision-making process are extraordinarily high. In a competitive talent marketplace where a significant percentage of knowledge workers prefer flexibility, policy decisions carry implications for talent retention, engagement, and organizational performance. Beyond individual preferences, research reveals that flexibility arrangements fundamentally shape the cultural fabric of organizations in measurable ways. The workplace flexibility landscape. Defining workplace flexibility in modern organizations. Workplace flexibility encompasses a spectrum of arrangements that give employees agency over when, where, and how they complete their work. The three primary models emerging in contemporary practice include flexible arrangements, organizations providing employees substantial autonomy to determine their work location, often including fully remote options with limited or no required office presence. Hybrid arrangements, structured approaches requiring partial office attendance, typically 2 to 3 days per week, with varying degrees of team coordination and individual choice. Full-time in-office arrangements, traditional models requiring employees' physical presence for all or nearly all working hours, with limited exceptions. Beyond these location-based definitions, true workplace flexibility often incorporates temporal flexibility, control over working hours, operational flexibility, autonomy in how work is performed, and boundary management support, resources for work-life integration. Kosek and Lorch. 2018. Prevalence, drivers, and distribution. The distribution of workplace flexibility policies has evolved dramatically since 2020. Prior to the pandemic, only a small percentage of U.S. employees worked primarily remotely, rising substantially during peak pandemic restrictions. According to Buffer's 2022 State of Remote Work report, the landscape has shifted considerably, with many organizations adopting various flexible and hybrid arrangements. Industry variation remains significant. Technology, professional services, and financial services lead in flexibility adoption, while healthcare, manufacturing, and retail show higher in-person requirements due to operational constraints. Company size also influences policy adoption, with different patterns emerging across organizational scales. Key drivers influencing workplace flexibility decisions include real estate cost optimization, talent acquisition and retention pressures, leadership assumptions about productivity and collaboration, industry-specific operational requirements, geographic distribution of Talent pools: organizational and individual consequences of workplace flexibility. Organizational performance impacts. The relationship between workplace flexibility and organizational performance is nuanced but increasingly measurable. According to the Glassdoor data visualization presented in this article, organizations with flexible arrangements show advantages in agility metrics compared to those with stricter in-office requirements. Productivity research provides additional context. In their seminal study, Bloom et al. 2015, conducted a randomized control trial with a Chinese travel agency, finding that employees who worked from home demonstrated a 13% performance increase, with 9% coming from working more minutes per shift, fewer breaks and sick days, and 4% from more calls per minute, attributed to a quieter working environment. This controlled study offers evidence that flexible arrangements can maintain or even enhance productivity in certain contexts. Innovation outcomes present a more complex picture. While conventional wisdom suggests in-person collaboration drives innovation, emerging research challenges this assumption. Organizations with deliberate connection strategies appear to maintain innovation capabilities regardless of physical co-location patterns. Individual well-being and stakeholder impacts. The data visualization from Glassdoor reviews indicates that work-life balance scores decline as organizations move from flexible to hybrid to full-time in-office arrangements. This aligns with broader research findings on employee experience. In Gallup's 2022 State of the Global Workplace Report, employee engagement and well-being measures show correlations with flexibility options. The report highlights that organizations offering appropriate flexibility tend to see higher employee satisfaction scores and lower burnout indicators. Demographic impacts add another critical dimension. Employees with caregiving responsibilities often report particular benefits from flexible arrangements. Similarly, employees with disabilities may experience better workplace integration when provided location flexibility. These differential impacts suggest flexibility policies play a role in advancing organizational diversity, equity, and inclusion objectives. Evidence-based organizational responses: structural flexibility with intentional connection points. Organizations achieving both flexibility benefits and strong cultural cohesion typically implement structured flexibility models with deliberate in-person touchpoints. Rather than mandating arbitrary office days, they design meaningful connection opportunities aligned with work processes. Evidence indicates that the quality of in-person time matters more than quantity. Companies with fewer but more purposeful in-person sessions report stronger cultural metrics than those requiring regular but unstructured office attendance. Effective approaches include purpose-driven gathering designs, quarterly multi-day immersive sessions focused on relationship building and strategic alignment, monthly team days structured around collaborative problem-solving, project kickoffs and milestone celebrations conducted in person. Many technology companies have implemented team-based flexibility approaches where teams collectively determine which activities benefit most from in-person collaboration. These approaches can help maintain cultural cohesion while offering employees significant autonomy in where they work. Cultural rituals and digital-first engagement. Successful organizations recognize that culture transcends physical space through intentionally designed rituals and digital engagement patterns. Research suggests formalized virtual culture-building practices can effectively replace passive in-person exposure. Effective approaches include digital cultural scaffolding, structured virtual coffee connections and mentoring programs, digital recognition platforms with high leadership visibility, team agreements on communication norms across channels, virtual social events designed for distributed participation. Organizations that have operated with distributed teams for years, such as those in the technology sector, demonstrate that deliberate cultural architecture can thrive without constant physical co-location. Their approaches often center on documentation, asynchronous transparency, and structured connection rituals. Leadership capability building for distributed management. Research reveals a critical insight: flexibility's success correlates strongly with leadership adaptation. Organizations investing in manager capability building for distributed team leadership show significantly better outcomes across cultural dimensions. Effective approaches include leadership development for distributed excellence training in outcomes-based performance management communication skills for digital-first environments recognition techniques that work across distributed teams. Trust-building practices that don't require physical presence. Larger organizations with established learning and development functions have created dedicated curricula covering digital engagement techniques. Asynchronous communication best practices and outcome-based evaluation methods. These investments in leadership capability enable the implementation of flexible policies while maintaining strong performance management practices. Technology infrastructure for equitable experiences. Organizations successfully supporting flexible work arrangements implement technology infrastructures designed for experience equity rather than merely enabling remote functionality. Evidence indicates that companies making substantial investments in collaboration technologies, digital workflows, and equipment parity demonstrate stronger cultural scores across flexibility models. Effective approaches include experience equity technology investments meeting room redesigns for hybrid participation parity standardized home office equipment stipends digital workflow tools that eliminate location dependencies. Asynchronous collaboration platforms complementing synchronous tools. Technology companies have developed comprehensive approaches to hybrid work that standardize the collaboration experience regardless of location. These approaches include technology setups for home and office locations and redesigned meeting rooms to better accommodate remote participants. Data-driven policy evolution. Organizations demonstrating the strongest cultural outcomes across flexibility models implement continuous listening and policy adaptation strategies rather than static approaches. Evidence shows that companies regularly measuring the impact of their flexibility policies and making data-informed adjustments outperform those with fixed approaches, regardless of where they fall on the flexibility spectrum. Effective approaches include continuous improvement frameworks, quarterly pulse surveys measuring cultural dimensions, structured experiments with different flexibility arrangements, team-level flexibility scorecards with cultural metrics. Regular policy refinement based on performance data. Forward-thinking organizations have implemented approaches where different business units test varying hybrid models while measuring outcomes against consistent metrics. By systematically collecting data on productivity, collaboration patterns, and employee experience, these companies refine their flexibility policies based on evidence rather than assumptions. Building long-term cultural resilience. Flexibility as a leadership competency. Organizations preparing for sustainable success are integrating flexibility leadership into their core competency frameworks, rather than treating distributed work as a temporary accommodation. Leading companies are defining specific capabilities that enable leaders to thrive in flexible environments. This approach recognizes that effective leadership in flexible contexts requires distinct skills beyond traditional management capabilities. Companies investing in developing these competencies position themselves for cultural resilience regardless of future workplace evolutions. Key elements include developing leaders who demonstrate comfort with ambiguity and distributed decision-making, focus on outcome measurement rather than activity monitoring, build psychological safety across physical and digital environments, model appropriate boundary management and work-life integration, cultural architecture independent of location. Forward-looking organizations are systematically redesigning cultural systems to function independently of physical proximity. This approach treats culture as an intentionally designed system rather than an environmental byproduct. Organizations building location-independent cultural architecture focus on explicit articulation of values with observable behavioral indicators, recognition systems that function equally well across all work arrangements, onboarding experiences designed for distributed relationship formation, communication practices that create transparency regardless of location. In her book, Anthrovision, A New Way to See in Business and Life, Gillian Tett, 2021, discusses the concept of cultural systems that operate through multiple reinforcing channels. This multi-layered approach ensures cultural continuity even as workplace arrangements evolve. Measurement evolution beyond presence. A fundamental shift in sustainable organizations involves moving from presence-based to impact-based evaluation frameworks. Companies building long-term resilience are systematically redefining how they measure both individual and organizational success. This evolution includes performance management systems focused on outcome delivery rather than work process, team effectiveness measures capturing collaboration quality independent of location, cultural assessments measuring consistent dimensions across different work arrangements, leadership evaluations incorporating distributed team effectiveness metrics. Organizations making this measurement shift position themselves to make evidence-based decisions about workplace arrangements rather than relying on assumptions about the relationship between presence and performance. Conclusion. The evidence from the Glassdoor visualization and supporting research provides a compelling counter-narrative to traditional assumptions about workplace flexibility and corporate culture. Flexible arrangements often correlate with stronger performance across cultural dimensions, particularly in agility, work-life balance, and supportive culture metrics. This data challenges the fundamental premise driving many return-to-office mandates. Organizations requiring full-time office presence in the name of culture building may be inadvertently undermining the very outcomes they hope to achieve. The path forward requires moving beyond binary debates about location to focus on the specific cultural systems and leadership capabilities that drive organizational performance. Companies that build flexibility-compatible cultural architectures, invest in distributed leadership capabilities, and implement purpose-driven connection opportunities will likely outperform those relying on physical presence as a cultural proxy. As organizations navigate ongoing workplace evolution, those making evidence-based decisions rather than relying on traditional assumptions about the relationship between presence and culture will be positioned for both talent advantage and performance leadership in an increasingly flexible future.